And we're continuing with the 10th chapter of The Whispering Mountain. Tom Dando has finished his poem and is going to sleep for a bit. Erebus is talking to Yehemelich, who is the leader of the small people, and his name and the island that her mother came from are definitely stirring something within him. So we'll pick up after the break in the page and see where we're at.
He is the oldest of our tribe, a man with bottomless memory for old histories. Although it is so long since our forefathers came from there, he can describe the streets of Sayer and Tyden as if he himself had set foot in them. Maybe it was the land of Italy your ancestors came from then, not far from Militia, I am thinking. But try as he would, Yehemelich could not recall if Militia lay east or west, or, he presently began to wonder, north or south of his homeland. If only Abipol were here, he sighed. Who is Abipol, sir? He is an elder of our tribe, a man with bottomless memory of the old histories, although it is so long since our forefathers came here that he can came from there. He can describe the streets of Sayer and Tyredon as if he himself had set foot on them. Where is he to be found, sir? Can I be fetching him along for your excellency? But Yehemelich shook his head. Abipol is a solitary, a hermit. When the town of Mount Agadu began to grow in size, and many people came there to take the waters, and outsiders entered the caves which had been our undisturbed home for so many hundreds of years, we feared discovery. We had long been used to navigating the Marin River in our camel-skin boats, coming down the underground ways to the shore to catch fish by night, so we migrated and made dwellings in this cliff for ourselves and our few remaining camels. But Abipol would not leave. He loves the mountain and prefers to stay there in hiding, playing his music and remembering the old tales, and because of his surly temper, the others were not sorry to part from him. Erebus was interested. He plays music, sir? What kind of music would that be, I am wondering? I see you have a picture of a harp hanging over your door. In the old days, he explained, my tribe were renowned for their skill of making harps. The conquerors used to buy them. At one time there used to be quite a number of old harps lying about, but these days, since we cannot dispose of them, they have mostly been melted down into more useful articles, such as fish-hooks or cooking pots. Ah, dear, they're sad, exclaimed Erebus warmly. Dearly would I have liked to buy one. If I had enough money, I always wanted a harp I have. Yehemelich looked at her gravely and kindly. Then indeed I wish we had one to give you, lady, but I fear there is not now a harp to be found among us, except that of Abipol, if indeed he has not broken it. If indeed he has not broken his in a passion, for it is a curious thing that although we can make musical instruments and love music, the power of making music itself is not found among us. We can make things with our hands from gold and ivory, but weaving beauty out of the air is not our gift, and it is a grief to us. Abipol has more skill than most, but it is not great. Often in a rage he would hurl his harp down. The sounds he made were more likely to set your teeth on edge than to lift your heart up. On a sudden impulse, Erebus unslung the little crwth she had brought with her and began tuning it. Yehemelich listened with delight, even to the first odd and wandering notes. Tennis and Strato poked their heads through the doorway, and then stole in. Soon several more convalescent patients came tiptoeing along, as if they could not resist the sound. Erebus, having tuned the crwth, began to play a simple lullaby. As she did so, more and more people came quietly into Yehemelich's cave and squatted down. By the time she was through, there might have been 15 or 20 of them there, lost in silent enjoyment, their eyes dreamy with recollections of things that had happened before they were born. It almost seemed as if the music were doing them more good than food and medicine. Sir, said Erebus to Yehemelich,
after she played all the airs she could remember.
"Has your Excellency ever heard of the harp of Teotihu?"
He shook his head.
"Not by that name, Lady Erebus."
She told him the tale of how Prince Kilhuch, helped by King Arthur, had stolen the harp for Princess Olwen, and how it had later passed into the ownership of St. Endenog.
"Do you think that might have been one of the harps made by your people, sir?"
"It seems very probable, my child. Can you describe this harp of Teotihu?"
"I have not seen it with my own eyes," Erebus said, "but I know the frame is of gold, and there is ancient writing on it."
"That does indeed sound like one of our make. Where is the harp now?"
"Stolen it has been, sir." She told of the theft in Owen's quest. "And I am thinking," she ended, "that it was stolen for the Marquis of Malon, who lives in the castle at the top of this hill."
"That is an evil fate for it," said Yehemelich. "Even we, living hidden, know of his wickedness. Sometimes we can hear the cries of his prisoners. Our topmost dwellings are not far removed from his lowest dungeons. Only a thick wall of rock lies between."
"Dangerous that sounds, sir. There is a wonder some of his people will not have seen any of your tribe."
"We are careful, my child. We keep a strict watch at all times. Our lives depend on it." Erebus shuddered at the thought of what would happen to the children of the pit if Lord Malon learned of their existence. Without a doubt, they would be enslaved and forced to work for him. She did not think they would last long under his rule.
"Would old Abipol know about this harp of Teotihu?"
somebody suggested. "That is a good thought," Yehemelich said. "Tennyson Strato, if you are not needed to help with the sick tomorrow, go in search of him and bring him hither." Another round of soup was now served out, and then Erebus decided that she had better leave. The slit of sky beyond Yehemelich's windows had darkened ominously. A few flanks of snow found their way in.
"Tomorrow I will come back before it is light," she said. "I will leave my cruth here."
"A good night to you, then, Lady Erebus. Our thanks go with you. May the bird of serenity perch on your roof." Erebus ran down the stairs to the cliff entrance. The tide had come and gone out again. Making sure that no one was in view, she slipped through the curtain of weed and away along the foot of the cliff. Dusk fell fast, and the first few flakes of snow were thickening to a blizzard. Tom's wagon, snug in its quarry, looked warm and cheerful, with a light showing in the window. As she approached, she could hear the sound of voices. She supposed that somebody must have seen the wagon and come out from Port Malin for a haircut or a dram of medicine. She was about to mount the steps when she paused and looked behind her, thinking she heard a footstep on the quarry.
"Is somebody there?"
she said. No answer came back, only the sigh of the wind and the flutter of the snow blowing in her face. Deciding she must have been mistaken, she opened the door, and was startled almost out of her wits to find the Seljuk of Rum comfortably established in her bunk, smiling from ear to ear and smoking a hookah, while Tom Dando read aloud The King at Caerleon. Erebus was vexed. "Why does this fat old bird of ill omen have to follow us about?" she thought. "Isn't the hospitality of his fine friend the Marquis good enough for him? It is too bad, just when I wanted Dada's advice about the tribe." To her embarrassment, the Seljuk seemed to read her thoughts. "Hey day! It is the obliging young lady, Person Spinster, who told me the way to the Devil's Leap," he said with a low bow. "Doubtless you are tired from your day's labours and wishing me at Jericho, Timbuktu, the ends of the earth, so I shall hasten to be off, take my departure, make myself few and far between. Ho, ho! I have had a most pleasant, famous, natter, gossip conversation with your good papa." "No call to go yet," said Tom Dando, who was dying to read some more of his poem. "My daughter will find us a bit of supper, isn't it, Erebus, my little one?" The Seljuk looked as if he would be glad to be persuaded, so Erebus, unwillingly mustering what civility she could, invited him to stay and began crossly cutting up win-wins and making a stew with wisters and pursley. "By Jove, that smells most mouth-wateringly delicious," sighed the Seljuk by and by. "I must confess that I find the table diet, provender of his lordship the Marquis, who serves nothing but yellow food, somewhat monotonous fare, which was why I slipped down to this rustic seaport to see if I could buy a tomato or a cucumber, but alack-a-day, you Welsh Sabbath,
Not a shop open I do find, and the dismal cold. Imagine then my joy, felicity, bewitchment, to discover again my dear acquaintance, Mr. Dando.
Erebus began ladling stew into bowls, devoutly hoping that Tom had not let fall any hint concerning the children of the pit, but she did not think that he would. Starting to lay the table, she was disconcerted to find the Seljuk's small brown-skinned servant huddled on the floor beneath it. She had not noticed him before. He shook his head uncomprehendingly when she offered him oyster stew. However, when the Seljuk translated her question, he changed it to a series of grateful nods, although he was wrapped in furs, and the wagon warm as an oven. He seemed shivery and sneezed as he accepted the bowl.
Cold he has, sir, Erebus said reprovingly to the Seljuk. There is wrong to bring him out in such weather, look you.
I know, indeed I know, my dear young person, but to tell truth, he would not be left behind at Castle Malin by himself. Yonder abode puts him in a mortal funk, so I told him he could come along with me. Eh, Rabadi? Rabadi nodded gratefully and broke into a flashing grin. It was plain that he was fond of his master, and Erebus began to think a little bit better of the Seljuk, who was spooning up the last drops of gravy from his pipkin with a perplexed expression. In effect, he went on, addressing Tom, I am troubled about that establishment myself, and I will be glad to ask your counsel, my dear confident friend, in need for a godfather.
Glad I will be to give advice, said Tom. We are not thinking too highly of the Marquis ourselves, I might mention.
In fact, lay bare my heart between you and me and the doorpost, the Seljuk went on. I partly came out in search of the police, gerrymander, constabulary, Bow Street runners, or what have you, but none do I find.
Good gracious me, I should think not indeed.
In a respectable Welsh village, said Erebus tartly. A lot of robbers do you take us for?
What girl? Said her father. Well, indeed, sir, but why are you wanting the police with you? 2 or 3 several various divers persons have come to the castle of late, explained the Seljuk. His lordship, as you know, takes a great interest in things made of gold. I, for reasons of my own, also take an interest in such articles, so, I take an interest in his lordship's dealings. Some of these visitors he interviewed behind a closed door, so I was not able to overhear exactly what he said to them. The Seljuk looked rather provoked about this, but I formed the inference, conclusion, that he was not being quite kind to some of them. Erebus and Tom exchanged a quick, anxious look. One of these people, I have reason to believe, was the venerable and respected Mr. Hughes, by whom I had the brief honour of being shown around the Pennygaff Museum. Dear, exclaimed Erebus. Another I have only too much cause to fear was my own old friend and benefactor, Brother Ianto.
Oh, wait, that's still the Marquis.
Dear.
Another I have only too much cause to fear was my old friend and benefactor, Brother Ianto.
Brother Ianto? Erebus was more and more alarmed. Mercy, why would his lordship be wanting Brother Ianto?
It is to do with a harp, some harp of Teru, I apprehend. Some harp of Teru, I apprehend. Conceive, hit the nail on the head, explained the Seljuk. I understand he wishes to locate, procure, lay his paws on the harp, and is unable to do so.
Indeed,
Erebus gave the Seljuk a suspicious glance, though he had already
thought he had already made off with the harp, I did. But why send for Brother Ianto?
It is because Brother Ianto will be the guardian of the harp of Teru, of course, Tom Dando put in testily, very much surprising his daughter. When she had told him of the harp's discovery, he had been so wrapped up in his poem that he had not seemed to take in the news.
Brother Ianto will be the last of the monks of St. Enidog, in whose keeping the harp was left.
And there we will pause.